Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we are diving into one of the most controversial, intensely debated, and honestly, secretly devoured books ever written about human psychology and strategy. We're talking about Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. Whether it's in a corporate boardroom or a prison cell, this is a book that people literally study obsessively. Why? Because it completely bypasses polite society and takes a hard, unflinching look at how the world actually operates.
Look, there are essentially two kinds of people in this world. Those who are moved around like chess pieces and those who actually move them. History has never once rewarded innocence. Power isn't just something that gets handed to you simply because you're a good person. It's engineered. It's built, quietly, through strategy. So the question I really want you to keep in the back of your mind as we go through all this material is, which side do you want to be on?
Now, rather than throwing an overwhelming list of 48 separate rules at you, we've organized the whole thing into 6 clear, digestible disciplines. We're going to cover everything from the core realities of power all the way to the ultimate endgame. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the core reality, uncomfortable truths about power. Like we just talked about, power is absolutely never given to you. It's engineered and it's taken. And there is this wild historical story that brilliantly illustrates Law 1, never outshine the master. Take Nicolas Fouquet, who was the finance minister to King Louis XIV. Back in the 17th century, Fouquet really wanted to impress his king, so he threw the most spectacular, magnificent party France had literally ever seen. The next morning, King Louis had him arrested. Fouquet spent the rest of his entire life rotting in a prison cell. Why? Because the people above you, your boss, your patron, your investor, they must always feel superior. The second they start to feel overshadowed or threatened by your talent, you become a massive liability. Make them feel brilliant and you'll be protected. Make them feel small and you will be removed. Moving on to section 2, foundational tactics. This is where we break down the absolute bare-bones rules of engagement in any social ecosystem. Think about Nikola Tesla versus Thomas Edison. This hits the nail on the head for Law 6, which is all about commanding attention. Tesla might have actually been the better scientist, right? The true invisible genius. But Edison understood something absolutely crucial. Genius alone is practically invisible. The person who captures the public's imagination is the one who wins, even if they aren't necessarily the most technically gifted person in the room. You have to make absolutely sure you are seen. Okay, let's talk about the Trojan horse for a second to really understand Law 9. For 10 whole years, the Greek army debated. They fought, they tried to breach the walls of Troy, and they completely failed. So what did they do? They changed tactics. They stopped arguing. They pretended to sail away, left a massive wooden horse as a gift, and hidden soldiers just opened the gates from the inside at night. The major takeaway here, you have to win through your actions, not your arguments. Debate simply exhausts people. Results? Results silence them completely. Here are a few more of these core tactical laws you really need in your back pocket. First, conceal your intentions. If people can't read your next move, they can't block it. Second, say less than necessary. Words reveal who you are, but silence forces other people to guess, which makes them anxious and way more prone to making mistakes. You also need to protect your reputation fiercely, because it can take decades to build and literally one careless moment to destroy. And finally, Law 15. Crush your enemy completely. When Rome defeated Carthage, they didn't just high-five and claim victory. They burned the entire city to the ground and erased it from the map. Brutal? For sure. But objectively speaking, a wounded enemy does not forget. Mercy left unearned simply becomes a future threat. All right, let's dive right into Section 3, Protective Intelligence. This is all about building an invisible, strategic fortress around yourself. Which brings us to Law 10, and this one is so crucial. Avoid the chronically miserable. You know, we really tend to overlook the sheer danger of emotional ecosystems. Suffering, bitterness, and bad luck, they are incredibly contagious in social settings. People who are perpetually unfortunate can unconsciously drag you right down to the bottom with them. So, how do you build that fortress? You need a solid defense playbook. Make others depend on you, because when people need you, they protect you. When you're asking for a favor, appeal to their self-interest, never their compassion. Act like a friend, but think like an intelligence officer. The very best information is always gathered in casual conversation. Create value through absence. If you're always around, you just become ordinary. A strategic withdrawal makes people remember exactly why they value in the first place. And finally, know exactly who you are dealing with. Remember Stalin?
His political opponents didn't just lose their careers, they vanished. Picking the wrong battle against the wrong person isn't bravery, it's a fatal waste. Let's pivot over to Section 4, the master strategist, and see how high-level tactical maneuvering actually works. See, a true strategist operates way above the fray. Try to stay neutral whenever you can. Let others fight it out while you position yourself as the indispensable third party. Play dumb. Seriously, wearing your intelligence on your sleeve just makes people defensive. When people feel like they're the smartest in the room, their guard drops. Also, surrender strategically when you're outmatched. It buys you the time you need to rebuild. Always keep your hands clean. If something controversial has to happen, make sure someone else is formally responsible for it. And lastly, always plan all the way to the final outcome, working backwards from your ultimate goal.
Now, there's this fascinating, vital principle of organizational psychology called Law 42, strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Basically, by just removing the central node of any gang, movement, or company, you collapse the entire structure. To put that into perspective, think about Al Capone's empire. When J. Edgar Hoover wanted to dismantle the Chicago mob, he didn't waste time and resources trying to arrest every single low-level gangster. He focused entirely on the shepherd. He removed Capone, the central node, and instantly, the rest of the organization just became a bunch of directionless sheep.
Okay, transitioning into Section 5, narrative control, perception, illusion, and spectacle. We're stepping into some deeply psychological, frankly terrifying, but absolutely essential laws dealing with how human beings perceive reality. Because power isn't just force, it's illusion. Take Law 27, for example. Play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. It's a bit chilling, but we highlight it because it exposes a fundamental human flaw. We are not primarily rational creatures. We are deeply emotional ones. We just use reason to justify what we already feel emotionally. And when that kind of narrative control is wielded without a conscience, well, the results are incredibly dark. Charles Manson never personally committed the murders his followers carried out. He did something far more potent. He essentially hacked them. He replaced the logic in their heads with a story, a new identity, and a mission. He made himself the center of their entire emotional universe. Let's quickly run through these illusion tactics so you know what to look out for. First, give people carefully designed options. Giving someone the mere illusion of choice is a ridiculously powerful control mechanism. Next, appeal to fantasies, because honestly, reality is often pretty disappointing. Find everyone's unique weak point, that one specific fear or desire you can use as leverage. Create visual spectacles to capture attention and bypass logic completely. And importantly, wait patiently. The exact same action can be a total disaster on Tuesday, but an absolute triumph on Friday. Timing is everything. All right, we have made it to our final discipline, Section 6, the end game. This is where ultimate power lies in transcending rigid rules entirely. The legendary martial artist Bruce Lee had this famous piece of advice: be like water. It sounds super simple, right? But if you really sit with it, the genius reveals itself. Water has no fixed shape. Pour it into a cup, it becomes the cup. Freeze it, it's a weapon. Release it, and it can literally erode a mountain. Fixed forms can be smashed and destroyed. But water? Water is unpredictable, it's adaptable, and it is entirely impossible to cut. And that brings us right to Law 48, assume formlessness. Because here's the thing, if you commit rigidly to just one identity, one strategy, or one specific method, you make yourself completely predictable. And predictable things can be easily anticipated and destroyed. A true master strategist has to remain fluid, adaptive, and totally impossible to pin down, as the world constantly changes around them. Let's wrap up our tactical playbook with some final wisdom. You have to win minds and hearts, because ruling simply through fear, that just breeds quiet, dangerous resentment. Mirror other people to unsettle them. It literally forces them to confront their own absurd behavior. Advocate for change gradually so the disruption feels invisible until it's irreversible. Don't project perfection. It honestly just makes you a walking target for envy. And finally, know exactly when to stop. The great leaders throughout history who ended up destroying their own legacies rarely failed to win. They just couldn't bring themselves to stop after winning. Success has this funny way of making people reckless. True discipline is knowing exactly when the game is over. So I want to leave you with this one provocative question to end our explainer today. Are you outside the game, or are you simply losing it without ever realizing you were a player? You see, these 48 laws, they don't preach to you. They aren't trying to tell you what's morally right or wrong.
They just impartially lay out how human nature and power actually function. Understanding these rules is really the only way to ensure you avoid being someone else's pawn. Power is a game. Well, now you know how it's played. Stay sharp out there and master the game.